Today, I'm joined by Finn Thormeyer, and I'm actually really excited to have this session because I'm an active listener of his podcast. To give a bit of an introduction to Finn, he runs the company Project 33, and he helps SaaS founders with their personal brand and warm outbound. And I'm sure Finn will correct me or expand upon this. But with this said, let me hand this word to you, Finn, and give us a quick introduction about yourself and what you do.
Cool. Thanks for having me. I think that introduction is roughly accurate. Started this agency kind of as a freelancer, dropped out of university because I was doing it for other people, didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just started creating content and then flew to New York, and people told me that what I was doing is called personal branding. I didn't know that term and was relatively early on LinkedIn. It's kind of embarrassing that I have only the amount of followers that I have, given that I actually started posting in 2019. On and off here and there, but mostly relatively consistent. And just happened organically. I was creating videos on LinkedIn, and at some point while in New York, two people approached me, business owners, and they were like, "Can you help me create videos for LinkedIn and I'll pay you money?" I was like, "Sure." And then just kind of grew from there organically. Freelancer, started hiring some people, and then just kind of narrowed down. Initially was anyone who was willing to pay me money. Now it's
Right.
quite, you know, growth stage, B2B SaaS, mostly kind of dev tool cybersecurity companies, so very technical founders that we work with. And yeah, that's it.
Very interesting. So maybe bring us back into the early days once you started out with your agency, even though back then it was probably quite a mess. Give us a bit of an overview of what you need to think about to get out of this messy stage. So you've overcome the first obstacles of starting an agency. What does it take to get to the other side, so to say, or is there even an other side?
Yeah, I probably did completely wrong because there's so many resources out there and YouTube videos and books and courses and all of that stuff, and I didn't use any of that. Which I
Stubborn
think,
boy.
yeah, I just like I don't know, I don't enjoy reading business books, and so I think it hurt me. Kind of if you measure it by growth rate and like amount of revenue and stuff. So I'm sure there's lots of stuff out there. I would say, I mean, one, it's always good to be kind of practicing what you're preaching, right? Like if you run a LinkedIn content agency, you probably want to be good at LinkedIn content and be putting out LinkedIn content and use it yourself to get customers. If you run a email outbound agency, you probably want to be doing email outbound and get customers that way. If you're an SEO agency, you probably want to be doing SEO and all of those things because one, it obviously helps with credibility. Two, it helps you stay kind of up to date on what's working, what's not working because you're testing on yourself. So I think that was always very helpful for us. And then I think just niching down, I mean, it's the classic advice, right? Like it's kind of difficult in the beginning because you kind of just need to make it work somehow. But I think as soon as possible, like if I would start a new agency today, and I don't think I would, but if I would, my goal would be get one case study with one good customer. In an ideal world, some like name that people recognize, but often it's not always possible to do that. And then just pursue more of those. Like if you have a case study and that customer is a cybersecurity company and they're doing 10 million in revenue, I would be reaching out to every single other cybersecurity company that's doing 10 million in revenue and use that case study to say, hey, we did this for them. And then just focus on that. And I think that's always helpful. Like it was just a gradual, slow niching down for us. And I probably could have grown faster if I just would have made a more drastic, immediate cut right away.
I have to say, I have pretty much the same story and actually the same advice when it comes to starting an agency. But let's become more specific. This was from a strategic standpoint. But how do you tune into your craftsmanship? Let's say you need to master a service, right? So how did you do this while there is essentially no real path which you can follow if you really want to master something well, right? You need to figure it out yourself. What advice do you have there?
You mean like how to learn the craft that you're doing for customers?
Yes,
I
because
mean, yeah,
if
just
it's
doing
let's
it,
say
no?
if it's
Yeah.
taught in uni, most likely it isn't a real edge in the market, right?
Yeah, I think you just got to be doing it. You got to get your hands dirty, right? As I said, if you're running LinkedIn content agency, like you should probably producing LinkedIn content every single day. If you run a YouTube agency, you want to be on YouTube and be experimenting yourself and run your own vlogs and have your own channel, maybe 2 channels, and just play that game. And then obviously do it for customers. I think overall, like, and everyone wants to grow more quickly than they probably should. And so I
Right.
think that's why I said the one case study thing, because when I was at that stage, I just wanted to have 5 or 10 customers as soon as possible. The problem with that is you probably end up with 5 to 10 customers that are kind of incoherent, that are each in different fields. You each do different things for them. You can't really focus on any one of them. You might end up with 0 case studies because you can't really commit and just do an amazing job for any one of them. And that's just harder. So, like, build that foundation slowly and have a good reputation. I think that's the other thing that I would say, especially if you try to, like, work with more legit larger companies. You can't burn your reputation. And I think especially a lot of young people, in the pursuit of virality and clicks and all of those things, you end up maybe saying outrageous things that you don't really believe, and it can just hurt your reputation, and that's not good.
That's right. So let's maybe make the bridge towards LinkedIn content. So you obviously run LinkedIn content successfully for yourself and also for your clients. So let's first break down what you need to understand as a founder from a strategic standpoint. And later on, we can talk about tactics which work right now. But let's start with the principles. What do founders need to understand about personal branding on LinkedIn?
So I think the right way to think about LinkedIn is a 24/7 networking event.
Right.
It's a place where you can meet your prospects, your customers, your investors, your employees, whoever you want to build a relationship with, you can meet. And there's just some exceptions on LinkedIn. Obviously, there's some people who just really don't use LinkedIn, but that's become gradually less and less true for more and more types of audiences. We have customers who sell to enterprise CTOs and it works for them, you know? And so, like, what do you do on a networking event? Like, you show up and you
You
try to
pitch
add
directly,
value.
right?
Yes, you go and you shake hands with every single one. You give them your business card and then you just peace out. No, you try to engage in real conversations. You try to add value. You try to listen. You try to add your own point of view. You obviously talk about what you do, right? The company that you're building and the product that you're building, but it's not the only thing that you constantly walk around with. You're trying to engage in conversations. Maybe you try to, like, get on stage at that networking event, right, and give a little keynote about your points of view and what you believe and the trends that you see in the market and problems and how you would solve that. That's your content, right? But it's like, if you just do that and then you peace out, like, it's not going to be anywhere as effective as if you stay afterwards and you meet people and you engage in conversations and you try to listen and add value and all of these things, right? And also, oftentimes you don't purely talk business. You might also, people often want to know, like, do you have a family? Like, where you're from? What did you do before you started this company? So, like, those are little, like, pointers that people pay attention to, just to, like, kind of evaluate you and figure out if you're a real person and whether you're trustworthy and find something to relate to. So, when we build a content strategy for a customer, like, at a high level, those are kind of the pillars. Like, we want to have them speak about their expertise and thought leadership, which is not talking about their product, not pitching, but it's
Mhm.
about tips that they have and strategies and insights and commentary on the industry and trends that they're seeing and stuff like that. Then obviously we want them to talk about their product and their company and what they're building and why and how and why it's different. And then also add some texture by talking about, the founding story, talk about themselves a little bit. Um, and then you do need to engage in conversations. Like, I think it kind of depends on, like, how much of your strategy you want to put into LinkedIn. For example, we are not our customers. Like, I run a super small agency. We're less than 10 people. We get all of our business through LinkedIn. So, like, I just spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, right? I write content. I reply to every single comment. I'm in the DM. I reach out to people. That's a lot of time. If you're running a $100 million company,
Yes.
you're not going to be spending 2 or 3 hours on LinkedIn. There, it might make sense to just post 2 interesting pieces of content, reply to a couple comments, and, limit it to 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. So it just depends a little bit on like how much you're trying to get out of LinkedIn. Um, yeah, but if I was starting something new, I'd just be spending all day on LinkedIn, meet people, connect with people, reach out to people. I think last thing, and I know I'm rambling here, feel free to interrupt me at any point. I think the last thing where people constantly fall short is that they think what they want out of LinkedIn is that they show up, they post some content, and then they get inbound. And that is most of the time not how it works.
Right.
As I said, you need to put out content, and then you also need to be engaging with other people, engaging with their content, commenting, all that stuff. And you want to combine that with outreach. So, for example, if you put out a post and about the problem that you solve and how you solve it and why and how you build it and all that stuff, and you get 10 likes on that post, instead of getting disencouraged that you only got 10 likes, look at the 10 people who liked. Look at any one of them fits your customer prospect profile, and then if they do, just send a connection request and say, hey, thanks for the like on my post. Is this topic currently relevant? Are you guys trying to solve this? Have you tried something like this before? And you'll engage in a conversation, and you'll book a lot more meetings by not having this black or white. I'm either doing outbound or I'm doing content and I'm waiting for inbound. It's a combination of both things that really helps.
Absolutely. So let me tell you actually a painful story. 8 months ago, I was exactly listening the advice, just post, be consistent, and I was posting 5 times per week. And
Hmm.
you know how much time it costs to create content, which you put in effort, right? And I got 0 leads from it. And it only started to shift once I did a bit of posting with value and then actually do warm outbound to this audience. And yeah, combining these two methods for me. So that's something that has truly worked for me. But maybe let's say you are in this stage right now. You're booking a couple of meetings. You are in the scaling phase. It works, but you're trying to systemize it because it's a bit messy. So how would you translate this into a system which, as you mentioned, saves the founder time? Because most likely they don't have the time to spend 2 hours, 4 hours on LinkedIn. How would you systemize it? I'm sure you can tell it from your perspective of your offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should only automate stuff that works
Mhm.
manually,
Right.
right? And I think that's where people often go wrong. They see these shiny LinkedIn automation tools, or now like the AI agents and AI
We're guilty of it.
SDRs. Yeah, and they set it up because they think the tech will solve it, but you need to first figure out like what's the actual manual process that works, and then once it works, you can figure out what parts you can automate. For example, for this specific thing, like one of the things that we run is we obviously create the content that goes out on the founder's profile. We then have something set up that can track who engages with this content, so we can pull in automatically every single profile that engaged with that post, liked, commented, shared. We then enrich it with, company information, company size, industry, all of that. You then apply your ICP filter to it. So you say, give me only the CTOs or only the heads of marketing at software companies with at least 50 employees. And then you connect that to whatever favorite outreach tool that you want to use. Hey, Reach, Lemlist, there's a million of them. And then you send a connection request to only those people with the message that you validated manually.
Yeah.
Usually that's some sort of, hey, thanks for engaging with my post. We're building this. Is this currently relevant? Some sort of like, it's not a pitch, it's a question
Mhm.
to validate whether what you're doing like is interesting to them at this moment in time.
Right.
Obviously, only a small percentage of people will reply, but the people who do reply, number one, they're more likely to reply because they're already engaged with your content. So number one, you're probably a little familiar to them. And two, if they engage with your post where you talk about, I don't know, GraphQL Federation, whatever thing that you do, it's more likely that this is currently a topic or an issue or an area of exploration for them, right? So you would just get better response rates.
And do you have some data? I know these things are really hard to attribute and measure, but do you have some data which shows you how this system is more effective than just doing cold outbound or just doing content?
But I mean, what we see is just you'll get higher response rates relative to your baseline if you compare it to your cold outreach.
Yeah.
Like it depends on, like it also depends on how how strong your product market fit is. It's never a black or white thing. Some
Mhm.
companies are very early and they're doing 1 million in revenue and they're still trying to figure out exactly what to build. And then some companies they're at 20 million plus and they know exactly what they're building and for whom. Could be anything between 2 to 3 times higher response rates, right? So that's significant. It still means that, maybe you'll only get 5 people to respond, but if you otherwise only get 1 or 2 people to respond, that's a meaningful lift.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the role of AI. So you definitely shouldn't scale anything that doesn't work manually. So once you have something, let's say it messaging fit, product message fit, or whatever it is, how do you approach it and where do you incorporate AI into your workflows? I heard there's a qualification step in there. How else do you use AI in your overall workflow?
So we actually use it for copywriting now quite a
Yep.
lot. I think it's quite
GPT-5 is great.
powerful there. If you have really good guardrails, you know what good looks like. You have a human in the loop who is an expert copywriter and creative director who can review the output. And you have really good examples from each customer of what style they're looking for. I think it can be very powerful there. I don't know. I mean, I think it depends just on your motion, like if you sell into enterprise, I don't think you should be using much AI to like write your cold emails or your message icebreakers because you might only be sending 10 per day. So like they will always perform worse. Then it's just a matter of like is the time saves worth the what you give up in terms of performance? And I think if you're selling high volume PLG motion, you're reaching out to thousands of people every day, then absolutely it makes sense. But if most of our customers sell into enterprise, and then I think like if the CTO of the Fortune 500 company liked your LinkedIn post, and that happens, only once every, maybe couple of weeks,
Yes.
like you don't need to use AI to make that more efficient. You should just personalize. You should look at that CTO's profile and write a custom message for that CTO.
Absolutely. What we find quite challenging, a bit of context, we're actually building an AI SDR for LinkedIn. I know you will hate it,
No, I
but I'm
don't.
glad to prove you wrong. But this is exactly the very difficult part to solve is tier one leads should be treated humanly and manually. Tier two leads should, there is, depending on your offer, if it's massive PLG, yes, you can go with fully automated, but in other cases, you might want to do it manually. But for tier three leads, we think it definitely makes sense to highly scale and automate it if possible. In enterprise cases, yeah, you might not even have such a massive TAM.
Yeah,
So yeah, it is again a nuanced discussion.
yeah.
So
I agree
um,
with that, by the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
you mentioned you're currently at around or roughly at 10 employees, a bit below. What are your plans with your agency? How are you planning to scale?
I am planning to not really scale. I am not planning to run an agency for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
I want to do other things. So for me, it's more like how can I run this agency very profitably while not working 60 hours a week so that I can dedicate headspace and time to those other long-term things that I really, really care about. And B2B SaaS marketing, even though it might hurt me, that's just not my passion in life, that I want to pursue for the rest of my life. So
So what
yeah.
is?
So what is it? I want to build a village.
Okay, interesting.
That's
Off the
the
grid, remote.
No,
Or
not off the grid. It's a longer conversation, but it's a culmination of a couple things that trends that I see happening and just things that I want to do. And so
absolutely. So next to this, how do you see the whole industry evolving? You've been around quite long. You've been posting on LinkedIn quite a lot. The algorithm has changed over the years. Principles stayed remained the same. What can we expect? What do you see at the moment?
I think good content still wins.
Yeah.
Um, I think the bar just gets moved of good what good is.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's just more competitive. And so I think it's partly that more people are creating, and then there's also all that AI content that now gets created. And so you're just competing for with more people for the same attention.
Right.
I think what that means is I see two types of people winning. There's the kind of native creator type winning, whose just full-time job it is to create high quality content. And they just spend a ton of time and a ton of effort. They use all the newest tools. They live and breathe content.
Right.
Um, and then I think it's the the legit thought leaders on the opposite end who, like one of our customers, he's the CEO of a publicly traded cybersecurity company. And previously, he was the CIO of Microsoft, VMware, and Disney.
Mhm.
And so, like, this person, he has seen things and done things that 99.99% of people are never privy to. And so we have some posts that went niche viral for him with
Mhm.
700 plus likes, where all we did is recount a story of when he was CIO at Microsoft and he went on this executive retreat and he met this executive at Google and they had this conversation and here's what the conversation was. And it's just like, that's the opposite end where it's not like the high production and he put a ton of effort into it and he engineered the hook to the last detail.
Right.
It's just like,
He's genuinely an interesting person.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
he is a person of value,
Yeah,
and that's something you can't fake.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the people will struggle is everyone in between
Yeah.
who is neither, a real expert in whatever they do, nor are they willing to spend a ton of effort and a ton of time just really nailing their content. I do think, people always say like this platform is dead and this platform is dead. I mean, YouTube has been around for a long time and it's obviously more crowded than ever. And yet still every year there's new people popping up um, and growing very fast and building an audience of hundreds of thousands or millions of people still today. And so I don't see why LinkedIn wouldn't be the same in 5 years where, yeah, it's going to be more difficult. Yeah, it's going to be more competitive. And if you do a good job and you have interesting things to say, you can go from 0 to 100,000 followers relatively quickly.
So I understand that it is definitely the polarities that actually wins. You can't be average, and that's not how the algorithm works. It is the top 5% who actually win. So what are the actions that a founder can do in order to get to this place? I know this is a very broad question, but what are the 80-20 levers that they can pull essentially? What is the 20% they can focus on?
You mean in terms of what to do on LinkedIn?
Yes, what kind of inputs do they need to do? Um, this can be defined as learning skills. This can be defined as a consistent schedule. Whatever comes to mind in your opinion, which gives the founder the most leverage if they implement this specific thing.
I mean, I think you need to be self-aware on where you land on that spectrum that I
Hmm.
just described.
Yep.
Like, are you someone who just has a wealth of experience and you were previously the VP of sales at Salesforce and you have incredible stories and like you can talk about meeting Mark Benioff and what he told you about this and that. Like, in that case, like, just share the goodies. If you are like, yeah, I'm kind of like a nobody and I've not done many things, then just be self-aware that it will probably just take a lot more hustle and you will need to spend a lot more time on the platform and spend a lot of time writing your content and maybe post daily initially and then kind of slowly get a sense of what's working, what's not, and then double down and you know and yeah, just like adding value always helps, right? Like you can out
Right.
hustle. Like if I don't know, Mark Benioff posts something on LinkedIn today, like he'll get automatically 1,000 likes just because he's the CEO of Salesforce.
Hmm.
He doesn't do anything. He doesn't need to respond to any comments, any DMs, right? Just from the fact of his authority, he'll get great engagement, right? If you're not that, then if you're active and you help out people and you make intros and you comment on their content and you share your point of view and all like you can out hustle it and also get good results. I don't know. I think there is if you're genuinely trying to build a business and you're not on there to like growth hack a couple things and get some people to sign up for something and make a quick buck and then peace out. Like there is no shortcut around figuring out like where can you uniquely add value
Hmm.
and have interesting, non-obvious insights and opinions that others don't have. And that might be your expertise, that might be the company that you run, that might be you have a proprietary data set that you can talk about, that might be that you're just willing to say very unconventional things and actually mean them. Maybe you're super, super charismatic on video and that can help you. But you just kind of need to be. I know this is not the answer probably that you're looking for, but I
It's
think
the truth.
the longer I do this, like you always want to be talking about like the newest hack and just like write your hook in this way and include a couple numbers in your hook and all of those things like help, but they're incremental things. And I think we've worked with so many customers now and we've seen the whole spectrum of like every single post just crushes and nothing works and we do it for 6 months and we still get only 3 likes on a post, and the difference is just like the person's insights. Like, do you actually have interesting things to say or do you not, and so like because all of them get the same, copywriting and video and like
Right.
hook frameworks that we try to apply to every customer, but it's still like,
So the ultimate learning from this is probably just do good shit in the
do
real
good
world.
shit. Like I think, being in the trenches helps. I think having some way of staying at the forefront of whatever you're doing, like I think that's why a podcast, for example, is such a powerful tool
Yeah.
because
Maybe
beyond
tell us
whatever.
more about the podcast part. How
Yeah.
did it help you essentially on your personal journey? Because you've interviewed a lot of great founders, which I admire,
Yeah.
and other people do too. And I would assume at the beginning, if you started out, you knew you aren't this founder yet, and you want to become something like this. So how did it change you? What did it help you with?
So I think first of all, the interesting thing is we have self-reported attribution on our website, right? Like where we ask people, how did you hear
Mhm.
about us? Um, And I started the podcast, I think over 2 years ago now. I'm 115 episodes in, something like that. I think for probably a year and a half, not a single person ever mentioned the podcast as
Mhm.
how they heard about us. And since then, maybe it popped up like 3, 4, 5 times, like not a ton of times. So if I was, running this as a marketing manager and I had to report to my whatever CMO or CEO and they would ask me like, hey, is the podcast working? I would have zero black and white evidence of it working. It would have been killed long ago if it was any normal company. But the good thing is I'm the business owner. I make my decisions. I don't need to report to anyone. And I know that this is super beneficial for us, even though, as I said, we have very few kind of.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a couple benefits. Number one, it's a relationship building tool because I can reach out to people that I want to speak to. And it's much easier to go reach out to them and say, hey, can I interview you on my show? Versus like, hey, can I pick your brain at a coffee meeting? Or hey, can I give you a demo of our product? Um, and so it's just a much easier way to get the foot in the door. And I've been able to talk to some personal heroes of mine, like Jason Fried, the founder of 37 Signals, just because I reached out to him and I said, hey, can I interview you? And he said, yes. So I think relationship building, right? You can reach out to prospects, to your dream customers. You can reach out to potential investors. Like you can choose who you want to build a relationship with. And it's just so much easier to build a relationship that way. That's number one. Number two, it's a constant way of me learning and staying at the forefront of what's working because I get to interview all these founders and CEOs and
Yeah.
heads of marketing of what they're doing and what's working for them and what tools they're using. And so like at this point, 80 to 90% of what they say I'm already aware of. But every now and then, like 10, 20%, like they tell me something new that I've never tried, that I've never heard of, this new tool that they're playing around with. And it just helps me kind of stay at that edge. Um, the third thing is obviously it helps me create content because even though the podcast and the YouTube itself might not generate, leads or whatever, I can then take some of that and turn it into LinkedIn posts. Either I can pull out clips, what everyone knows, or I can pull out like a, hey, I interviewed Galaga and here's the whole playbook of how he runs LinkedIn and kind of do a recap post and they do pretty well. Um, and then I would say the last thing, especially if you have well-known people on your podcast in your space that seem hard to get, like there's a halo effect. And what I've definitely noticed is because I also stream it on LinkedIn when I do it. And so I don't get a lot of viewers on the LinkedIn live stream because who watches it? But a lot of people get the notification that just says Finn just went live, and they might click it and they just see who I'm with,
Yeah.
and they might never end up actually watching the episode. But if it's a well-known guest, like I've had that multiple times in sales conversations where people say, "Oh, I saw you had Jason Fried on. I saw you had Henry Schuck on. I saw you had Alina from Chili Piper on." And
Mhm.
those are people that they know and that they look up to and respect. And so that just kind of colors off on us because they assume if I can get these guys on, then we must be doing something right. And so there's
Yeah.
also this halo effect. So I don't know. It's been super, super valuable, even though if I was a regular B2B company, this would have been killed long ago.
Right, right. That's also something that I realized as a, let's say, a naive founder, that at the beginning it's all about the tools and it's about AI, but at the end it really comes down to human psychology, and it has a lot of to do also about relationships and
Social proof. Social
social
proof is
proof.
everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe this is one nugget that I definitely take out of this conversation. Could you share one last advice which you would give your younger self? I know it's the standard question, but what kind of advice would you give your younger self, maybe just dropping out of uni? How should they approach business to get the fastest results, but the most sustainable ones?
I think two things come to mind. The first one is I think if you don't have any credentials and you didn't, I don't know, graduate with a computer science degree from, Princeton or MIT, the best way to get an opportunity is to do interesting stuff. So if I was trying to do anything, whether it's starting a LinkedIn agency or I was trying to, I don't know, get into SEO, like I would just be doing stuff. I would just
Yep.
do an SEO analysis. I would try to prompt ChatGPT and analyze, hey, how is this company doing and what do I see? And then build some report and, create a video around it and then talk about that stuff online, right? That could be LinkedIn, that could be YouTube, that could be Instagram, but like do interesting stuff and then talk about it. And then the world will kind of tell you, and then you
Right.
can, like, for example, another example for me was I at some point abandoned it, but I I had this idea at some point. I really like reading, and I wanted a way to remember some of my favorite bits and pieces from some of my favorite books.
Mhm.
Um, and so I had this idea of creating an Instagram account for my favorite books. And I would read the book and I would, highlight whatever resonates with me. And then I would create these Instagram quote posts,
Yep.
right, with my highlights. And then I would create an Instagram account. I had one for the art of the art of war by Sun
Mhm.
Tzu. I had one for Skin in the Game by Nassim Taleb. I had one for Ego's the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. And then I created all these image quote posts, like 50 or 100 per book. And then I figured out a way to automatically publish one of them per day and randomize it. And the reason why I did that is because I then wanted to follow that
Mhm.
Instagram account so that when I'm on Instagram and I'm
Right.
scrolling my feed every day, I'll see a random quote from one of my favorite books to kind of just remember organically the lessons. So it was just a side project for me. I decided to just make a LinkedIn video about it because I was kind of proud of it and I coded some custom Python to make it work and I stitched together a couple things and all of that. So I just made a 10-minute video talking about it. And that video ended up getting 10,000 views. And as a result, I had 3 authors reach out to me and they saw it and they were like, that's a cool idea. Could you do that for my book and I'll pay you money for it?
Oh,
And
really?
so I did that. I actually, whatever, I charged $900 back then. And I, as a service, I read that person's book. I
Right.
highlighted 5,200 things. I created the quote post. I created the Instagram account. I set up the automation for them. They paid me $900 one off. And right, I ended up abandoning it because most authors are poor and it's just super time consuming to read a book to do that. But anyway, right, that's another example that I could have turned into something, but that was just a result of me doing something that I was interested in and self motivated to do, then talking about it online.
Mhm.
And then it ended up just resonating with people. And they told me, like, I didn't post this because I was like, oh, I want to attract authors. I would just posted it because I thought it was cool. And then the world kind of told me, oh, this is cool. Here, I'll pay you money for this stuff. Right. And so, like, that's the approach, I think. The second advice that I would give, and I don't think anyone will actually listen to that advice, is that, like, you you want to be able to show something quickly, and so you rush,
Yeah.
and you try to start a company and grow it as fast as possible and get customers because you want to show people like, look, I'm making this much revenue and I have employees and all of these cool things. The problem with that is that as time goes on, you might end up building yourself a golden prison where you
Yes.
keep going and you keep going and you keep growing, and now you have employees and now they depend on you, and now you have this thing, and now you've been doing it for 2 years, so you kind of have some opportunity, like some what's that bias? Sunk cost fallacy, where you think, well, I spent those 2 times building this, and then you end up realizing that actually, if you would have sat down and thought about like what you actually want to do in life, this is not what you want, but now you're a little bit stuck. So I think just allowing yourself to like explore, take your time, say no to things is helpful. And I'm a little bit dealing with that, right? Like I told you about that village
Yeah.
idea and the agency. Like I'm at a point in my life a little bit where I'm like, if someone would ask me right now, like, or if someone would have asked me, let's say 5 years ago, like, hey, you'd be running a LinkedIn content agency, like, is that the vision that you have for your life? I'd be like, no. That might be a cool intermittent activity to
Mm.
learn business and to meet some people and to learn the basics, but that's not what I like want to do in life. Um, but then as you grow, like you have dependencies and employees and people, and so it just becomes harder to say, you know what, I'm just going to do something completely different. And so I think that can be the fallacy when you just pursue growth for growth's sake, you just pursue success for sake, instead of actually paying attention to what you want and what excites you and where you see yourself spending your life.
Absolutely. So, to wrap this up with point one,
Mhm.
my quick comment on this is probably this is very relevant for my generation personally, because we've become massively passive because we just consume content,
Mhm.
just like you're doing right now, watching this video, sitting on your chair and watching it on a laptop or on your phone. You're just consuming. So this is your go-to um, nudge for you to actually create what you have in your mind right now, because this will lead you down to a new reality, a new option, a new path, which gets unlocked once you start to take action, right? And to the second point, this is something I highly can relate to. My first year of entrepreneurship, or the first 2 years, was just building things up and tearing it down. Because I was in this endless cycle, and of course, I feel like this is something that will never stop. Um, you create something, there is creation and destruction. That's just the duality of life, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but I assume it gets harder and responsibilities get heavier. So looking forward to having more of this maze in my life. Yeah, thank you very much, Finn, for your honesty and
For sure.
for your insights.